Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk To podcast with author Charnel Williams. Tune in next time every Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And don't forget to live, laugh, and love.
Hello, everyone. Hello. How you love? Thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk To podcast. You can go to a lot of my platforms and just look it up. Let's Talk To podcast, YouTube. I don't know if we still going to have TikToks in a couple of days, but TikTok, Facebook. So I just want to thank you for coming on. And could you just tell the audience a little bit about your name and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for providing the opportunity for me to be on your podcast. And I hope you, your audience, and everybody watching, hopefully you all are having a good day and a good week. My name is Andrew Snorton. I'm based in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And I'm really excited to talk about a few of my moving parts as a published author, a little bit of the work that I do in education, and a little bit of the work I do in media. So again, looking forward to today's conversation, and thank you so much for having me as a guest on your podcast for Let's Talk To.
And thank you too, Andrew, for being a guest. So let's talk about being an author. I want to know how long have you been an author for?
Sure. Hey, that's a great question. Where did it all start? Technically, it started February of 2017. So next month will mark 8 years as a published author. And a little bit about how that journey evolved is I used to write for one of the online magazines until the summer of 2016. And so when that magazine shut down, it was kind of like I have, the writing skills. I'm like, I need to do something. So I was able to talk with a couple of colleagues to get ideas of how to extend my writing. Because as you can figure out, writing an article, while in principle it's still writing, it's a little bit of a different focus, like writing an article versus writing a book.
Right.
So after getting feedback from colleagues during that summer, I was able to put some things together. And February of 2017 is when I released my first book. So I'll show that once I get it out from my stack, if I don't share the process. So the very first book that I did, when I'm featuring here, Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep, Thoughts on Love with Joseph Snorton. And what makes this one, I'll say, a little bit of a special or different read is it is a book of poetry, but it's based on conversation with a long lost family member. So what we did is, unlike a lot of poetry where here's the poem, and sometimes it can be a little bit abstract. So even though like you're nodding your head like, yeah, it's deep, you sometimes don't always get the context or, the point of reference or things along those lines. So what we did is the beginning of each chapter is a portion of the conversation. So that way, when people dive into the poem, they have a better working idea of the topic, the areas, things along those lines. So that was my very first book that I did back in February of 2017.
So 2017. So I ain't gonna say a new author, but you sort of new into this game.
You know what? I'm gonna say this, regardless of how long people have been published, whether it's your first book or your umpteenth book,
right?
Always learning something new. Something new, and there are people who have been writing longer than me that pick my brain on stuff. So the thing I'll kind of say before we dive in on the other books is don't be intimidated by how long you've been writing. Yeah. Be encouraged at the fact that you are. And the thing is, you have the ability to speak to different narratives and topics, even if they've been done before, they haven't done it like you have. So like I'll tell anybody, don't be intimidated by someone who's done 20, 30 books or has done something 30, 40 years. Writing, honestly, when you really think about it, you do it at your own pace. You do it at your own pace, tempo, and sometimes your pace and tempo may change, which I think is a good lead into my second book. So the very first book I published was February of 2017. 2018, I changed direction. So my second book is 9 Stories of Faith, Volume 1. This came out in March of 2018, so almost a year later. And it's more interview-based where people opened up about what their biggest daily challenge is. So some people opened up when I interviewed talking about living with the physical health challenge, living with the mental health challenge, dealing with life after incarceration. And what they did is, in addition to opening up about this is what I deal with each day, they opened up about their respective faith. So the people from the faith community that I interviewed are of Christianity, mainly Christianity, but there's one interview that's of Islamic background and one of Hindu background. So they opened up about their biggest daily challenge, how through the lens of their faith, how they get perspective, how they utilize their support network, and how they've changed their way of thinking. So the mentality, I live with something versus I have it. If they have it, then it takes ownership. But if they live with something, it's like, okay, this is something I deal with, but before it gets, off the rails, these are the things I have in place. Like the elders would say, go sit down somewhere and get perspectives. That's the second book that I did. The third book that I did, Nothing Minor, goes in a totally different direction. This came out July of 2020. As many people know, when the pandemic was going on, you couldn't do anything. So Nothing Minor is based on my very first year of covering minor league baseball. And I was very intentional, where I'd say probably about 40% of the players I interviewed are of African-American background, because we know in the major level, it's less than 10%. So it's part game recap, part player interview, and player perspective. Some of the players who I interviewed are currently on major league rosters. Some names that come to mind include Tristan Casas, who's the starting first baseman for the Boston Red Sox, Tyler Stevenson, who is the starting catcher for the Cincinnati Reds. And I made sure to drop a little bit of history in there. So there's a special section on the Negro Southern League based in Birmingham, Alabama, which they kind of go back and forth between that museum and the Negro League Museum in Kansas City as to who has the largest set of archives or artifacts or collectibles or what have you. And some people might not realize, that the museum is there. So it's a little bit of the game recap, player interviews, a little sprinkling of history, just to get people a little bit more connected and engaged with the game. So that came out in July of 2020. So back to your original question, within like about a 3.5-year period is when I came out with my first 3 books. And then my most recent release, Quotes and Notes, Something's on the Horizon, is more of a journal think piece, because as we know, what you put in your head is going to show up in some way, shape, or form. So you got to be real careful about how your thoughts take residency and come out in your words and actions and all that, and then some. So all the quotes I put in there are quotes that I came up with the exception of one, which is borrowed from my grandmother. But deeper than the quote is the logic or explanation behind it, so people have a point of reference. And then it's space for the reader to journal. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you want to go deeper? Do you want to go in a different direction? So not only is it for readers to kind of pause and pivot and slow down, but it's good for me as well. So those 4 books were written and published between February of 2017 and October of 2022. So going back to what we were saying from the jump, don't be intimidated by how short or how long, how many, your topics or what have you. Just make sure that you're trying to be as authentic and accessible as possible. Obviously, get your stuff proofed and edited, and, advocate for yourself. People aren't going to know what you've done if you don't share it. And so it's great to have an opportunity to be on a platform like yours, where people get a working idea of what you've done writing wise. They can see if it's a fit for them or someone they know. And it just helps keep, things, constructively out there. So that's, some of the moving parts just as a published author.
So let's go back to your first book. Was you planning on publishing your book? Was it a plan, or was you just writing and doing, like some people just write just to be writing? You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. For me, it was a plan, and it comes back to that summer before I got this published. And, people write for different reasons. Some people it's a release. Some people it's just something to do. But I was looking at something a little bit bigger, and it's like, if I'm going to dive in, why not take it, to that next step, which is why I made sure to consult with a couple of people to say, hey, look, if I'm going to do this, what are things I need to be aware of? And it's just like anything. Like I'll tell people, writing takes consistency, but consistency looks different for folks. Some people might have to do something every day. Some people it's a couple of times a week. Some people it depends on the time of day or where they are. So you have to figure, and consistency can look different from project to project.
Yeah.
So I'd say once I kind of figured out what consistency would look like for this first book and really for all of the books, and again, just trying to, just be authentic and accessible, basically. So that's kind of where it happened. And like, with any author that you interview, there's always something in the works. Like we're always working on something, always thinking about what's that next topic or what's that next style or genre. And sometimes the process goes real swift. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But again, to anybody that is published or is thinking about being published, figure out what consistency looks like for you. Don't necessarily worry about the timing is important, but don't get so caught up in timetables. Try to get it as solid as possible, so when you put that out there for the world to see, they can kind of, get a better idea. This is where you're coming from. This is what you're doing. This is how you're doing. And like I said earlier, could your work be a fit for somebody or somebody that they know? And just keep it simple and straightforward.
And timing is everything too, because I learned, I used to do like try to catch the deadline, do all that stuff with the deadline. Then I learned it's a process. It's your process. It's not nobody else's process. Nobody can rush you to write your book, do whatever you want to do. It's your process. And some people slower than others. Some people take time. Like I published this lady book. She was waiting 20 years to publish her story. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not all about, like you said, it's all about timing. It's you. When you ready to put it out there, when you think it should go out there. So yeah, people waited to put their books out there. People waited, till they met someone that they can trust and work with. So it all boils down to timing. Like if you ask me now, Chanel, when your next book coming out? When it's come out? I don't know when it's coming out. I'm working on it, but I don't know. I can't give you a time frame, a month or a day. I can't do that, because anything while you writing, and I know you learned that this experience, anything can pop up while you writing a book. Something can happen. You understand what I'm saying? Anything can happen to you while you writing. So you can't. And I just wish like people take that time frame out of the circle. Because some people rush to do their story because they got a time limit, and then their story don't even be like it's supposed to be, or if they would have took their time, because you know why? Because they rushed it.
Well, and to your point, don't get me wrong. It's like you want to set a target so that way you're getting closer to getting done, because there's people who'll be like, well, I've written this and written that. I'm like, well, have you published it? And it's like crickets. So you want to have enough structure to where you're getting a step closer to getting it done. But like I explained, like my first 3 books came out within about 3.5 years. And then it's like, hey, I need to slow my roll. Not to say that the work wasn't done the way I wanted to, but you can't always, it's not like churning out, or even like in music, for example, some artists churn out something like every month or whatever, and that might work for them, but that might not work. Then you think artists like Sade, who puts out something once each decade, but it's still like, a great masterpiece. So It comes back to what I said before. For anyone who's writing or is thinking about writing, you've got to figure out what consistency looks like for you. And once you figure that out, and it can change from book to book, it really can.
Sorry for cutting you off. You can't rush the process. I done had so many clients that came to me telling me they was rushed because of the due date, and some of their books ain't even sound like they wrote it. You understand what I'm saying? Because They was rushed through the process. They got, say, 6 months to finish it off. You understand what I'm saying? Like when somebody tell you, you have to finish your book within 6 months or whatever. They rushing to beat the deadline. And I don't think that's good for a writer. I think all writers should take their time and process their work and process what they want to do. Instead of being rushed.
Yeah. And like we're both saying, I think it's good to set a date so that way you don't get track, but understand, like, the goal is, how much closer are you to getting done? And any of us at different times, have had a situation where things don't go as smoothly. Like you said, life happens and things along those lines. So like I said, it will vary from book to book. It'll vary based on the topic.
Right.
That consistency is going to look different for everybody, not only just how they do their day to day, but depending on the topic that they're going to cover, man, it can change. It can change. Right. So I'll say this: have a level of structure. You do need some structure. Have a level of structure, but allow for some flexibility within the structure. And like you said, just try to get it done where it's as fluid as possible with your editing, with your proofing. Make sure it's your voice, but you're doing what you can to constructively amplify that. So that way the message and narrative are, those are as clear as possible.
Yeah, that's true. Did you self-publish your book?
Yeah, I did. I self-published. And as you're aware with self-publishing, there's a lot of, the good thing about self-publishing, you have to learn a little bit of everything about stuff. Like I said, your editing and proofing, like you want to make sure you have the background, or you align yourself with someone who does, because you want it to be as professional as possible. And it's a representation of you. You have to be aware of your opportunities to talk with different people like we're doing right now, and understand when people are kind enough to open up their platform, be grateful. Right. Because they're helping you to connect with people that you don't know that may have an interest in what you're doing. And like I was saying earlier, it can either be someone who's like, hey, based on what he's done or what she's done, I want to link up with this person, or I want to get, or this isn't a fit for me, but I know somebody who it could be a fit for, and that still helps. And getting back to the self-publishing, making sure you have to take ownership of making sure your work is done as professionally as possible. You have to take ownership when you connect with different podcasters or press and media. You've got to take ownership in communicating. You've got to take ownership in understanding online is cool, but when it comes to writing, it is still people-oriented. It's people-oriented, and you still have to, as best as possible, be out amongst people, because everybody isn't online. Everybody's not online.
Yeah.
Think about the universe of people who are not online. You've got to find ways to meet, greet, connect, and what have you. So you learn, and you can attest to this. You learn a lot, and you have a better working idea of what it can look like. But it's like anything, you just have to take the time and put in the work. That's basically it.
And that's the key word: put in the work. You have to put in the work for your own project. And it's for those who go to a publishing company too, because ain't nobody gonna promote your work like you promote your work. So you really, and like you said, go to them outings. Like I just had a conversation today on my conference call. Like I was telling the lady how so important it is to go out there, go to events, talk to people, get business cards. You understand what I'm saying? Like you just said, everybody is not on the internet. A lot of people don't even know how to use the computer. Older people. You understand what I'm saying? So it is best. And I was telling her, she was like, oh my God, I got to do all that. Yes, you have to do that. You understand what I'm saying? If you want your work out there, it's up to you. All I can do is tell you and give you advice on what to do. It's up to you to take that next step. Okay, you wrote your book. So what's the next step after you write your book? because it's not finished.
Exactly. It's almost like what you were saying reminded me of when you go to the grocery store. It's like you still got to go ahead and pick out the groceries, otherwise you're not going to eat. So it's like, or, you think about it, you go out to your favorite, I don't know, happy hour spot or restaurant. Okay, just because you show up and sit down doesn't mean you're going to get a meal. You got to talk with the staff, or if you are comfortable with technology, scan the QR code and see what's on the menu, ask questions and ask people, hey, look, when people come in, what do they normally eat? And I think that's a good point you raised, because I think some people, especially authors who self-publish, get a little bit frustrated because they feel like once I put it online, I'm good. But
yeah, like
we're both saying, there's other moving parts that you have to be aware of. And a lot of that you do have to take ownership of. Every once in a while, as long as it's someone who's trustworthy and credible, you can outsource some stuff. But you got to keep an eye out on what you're doing, the consistency, things along those lines. And if the only thing you do is just do a post and leave it out there, think about it. Like, online is a tool, but it cannot be the only tool that you use. And you still got to get out amongst people. You still got to make sure you're talking with outlets like yours to have the have the conversation and just get more comfortable, just with talking with people. There's always something, and you learn what you can, apply what you can, try to be as consistent as possible, and enjoy the process. It's not overnight. It takes time. It really does.
And it takes a lot of time. And just like you said, it's good to get out with people, because sometimes it's good to go to these events, because guess what? The readers want to meet the author. They want to see who behind is right and who behind is brilliant. What made you put this in a book? What made you end it like that? They want to talk to you. They want to connect with you. It's all about networking. So this, like I tell people, it's good to go to these events. And I understand a lot of people don't have money to go to events. I understand that. But what about your community? You can always go to the library. You can go, to different community events. That a lot of community events is free. If you don't even go get a table, you can go pass out your business cards. You understand what I'm saying? You got to do some type of stuff with your feet. I call it walking on your feet. You got to do it, because, I can't, that's just like me and you. I can't help you if you're not helping yourself. You want me to go out there and promote. What are you doing? You understand what I'm saying? Exactly.
And it's like, you'll be surprised, like when people see you making an honest effort, you'll be surprised people who will say, hey, you might want to, like you said, look at the library, or look at this festival, or look at this event. And yeah, you've got to, you can't be everywhere, but you've got to be somewhere.
Right. Somewhere.
You might not be able to travel across the country, but you can travel across town, those types of things. And just try to, again, like you said, just consistently and constructively share who you are, share what you've done, share why you feel it can be a fit for that immediate person or someone they know. And, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. Definitely. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, because I met a lot of people just by going to events. I ain't saying online is not good, but you got to be out there. You understand what I'm saying? You really have to you got to go out there and be in a crowd, because nobody ain't going to know you until you go and step in that crowd. And you'll be surprised who you meet. Somebody, like you said earlier, somebody can help you. You might meet an editor. You might meet, somebody that can help you, and vice versa. You can help them. So I think it's good. And that's why I go to a lot of events and give a lot of events, because of networking. And then you got to be sure with yourself. You got to be confident in yourself.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You have to be your biggest advocate. And, how that looks is going to be a reflection of, your personality and whatnot. Everyone doesn't have to be a rah-rah person in order to show your confidence. Sometimes your confidence is like maintaining your cool, maintaining your poise. The whole, like, when you talk, I listen. When I talk, you listen. just being able to do that, share and exchange, so you have a better idea of where someone's coming from. They have a better idea of where you're coming from. Then you can figure out, where do you meet? And I think, it ties in with something else I said before, where this is a time process. It isn't overnight. I think some authors, get disappointed or frustrated when this doesn't happen or that doesn't happen, but it's a process. And I think, and something I try to do is, as long as they leave with something, if they don't leave with your book, do they leave with your information? So that way they can track and see what you're doing, because you'll be surprised. Someone that may not initially connect, but a month, 2-3 months down the road, they see you. And we've all experienced this sometimes, because of your energy, your focus, like you said before, your confidence and your consistency. It's like, I'm gonna support this person because it's like they're making an honest effort. Or
right.
What, again, like I said, the work that you've done may not be an immediate fit, but that person may have someone in mind where it could be a fit, and that still helps. So you just try as best as you can. That's what you do. Just try as best as you can. Learn from what doesn't work. What adjustments, do you need to make? And you're running a marathon. You're not running a sprint. You're running a marathon. Times that you pick up your tempo, but you're running a marathon. And last time I checked, marathons take time. Or better yet, to use a food analogy, I kid around, like the best steaks, the best chicken, best fish, when you cook out, is what? Marinated. What is marinated? Time. You don't just throw it out there. You thaw it, season it, let it sit and soak for, a few hours. Then you slow cook it on the grill and whatever to keep everything together. It's like, sometimes the writing process is like marinating, meat for a cookout. And think about it. Or for those who are 21 and older, the best things are what? Aged a little bit longer. When it's aged, is it what? It takes time to ferment, or whatever the process is. You don't just pluck something out and grind it down. It's like, all right, let me like, nah, man, you got it. You have to, some things really do take time, and you got to do it. And every once in a while, yes, there's times you have to pick up your tempo. That is true. But you understand it's a marathon and not a sprint. And
right.
Periodically pick up your pace, and go from there. And like you said, just enjoy the experience and journey for what it is, and enjoy the fact that you have the potential to open up somebody's eyes, or they can revisit something, or they can look at things from a different vantage point, or you may be able to change, like we've heard, if you change one person's life, I mean, that's a start right there, and that's a blessing.
Right. Yes, you only have to reach that one person. That one person, if you reach that one person, you did something good.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, I'll say this before I share a couple of upcoming dates to any reader, any book club, any bookstore, any book festival, or anybody who's been supportive. I'm thankful and grateful, like I really am. You didn't have to show up and show out. You didn't have to lend support. So to everybody, past, present, and future, just definitely want to take time to say thank you. And I'm definitely thankful and grateful to each and every one of you. So thank you.
Now, let me ask you this question. You wrote 4 books, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, have you ever had writer's block?
Yeah. I mean, there's times where the process doesn't flow. And I think whenever you have those moments, you handle it differently. Sometimes to kind of reboot, you may have to go to a different space where you write, or you might have to write at a different time of day, or sometimes you leave it alone for a couple of days to clear your head. Like the process isn't always automatic, not only because life happens, but I think there's times where authors can be their own worst critic. Like you feel like once you get, it has to be perfect. But you think about when you're in school, you'd outline if that's your thing. But one of the biggest things is what? Writing a rough draft. And the whole point is get it out there. And now you go back through and see what can you do to clean up or fine-tuned so the voice, the narrative, whatever, is coming out a little bit smoother and a little bit more accessible for the reader. And like you said earlier, finding, making sure you're striking a balance between being polished and finding your, and still being who you are. So yeah, there's process doesn't come easily. And to me, I mean, I don't care who you are. Like I said earlier, whether it's your first book or your umpteenth, almost every author is going to have a moment where the process is not fluid. But what you do to get back on track is going to vary. So just because you changed up writing from daytime to nighttime, it might have worked in that particular case or that particular book, but it might not work all the time. So you've got to be open. You've got to be open to different approaches in regards to getting back on track, clearing your head. Sometimes you toss this and start over, but you're going to have some times where the process is not fluid.
Right. Right. Because everybody, I know a lot of people go through that. And, just like you said, sometimes you're just going to have to stop for a minute, do something else. Because sometimes you can write too much, like you 24/7. And sometimes you need a break. You really need a break from writing. I know you want to get that book out there. You can't wait till people start purchasing, going to events, going to whatever you got to do to make this happen. But sometimes you got to sit back and relax and rest.
Well, it's just like anything. It's just like people that like to cook. I mean, you can't cook all the time. Sometimes you got to order out and go out to eat. Or when you're house cleaning, I know I got laundry I got to finish, but sometimes you only do a load or two. It's like, whoa, I got to stop. So we all have moments where we pause and reboot. And so it's okay during the writing process that at times you're going to have to pause and reboot. And I failed to mention, I forgot the audiobook series I have. The same type of deal when you're recording an audiobook. Sometimes the recording process is very fluid, and sometimes it's like, man, this is just not the day. It happens. So you understand those types of things are going to be part of the process. You might not be a fan of it, but you understand that's going to sometimes happen. When it happens, deal with it accordingly, get back on track. And that speaks to the point that you raised and what I shared. Deadlines are helpful for you to have a goal or a target, but the goal is to be that much closer to getting done. So if the deadline was, I don't know, you're writing a short book, 5 chapters tomorrow, and you've only got 4, it's not a failure. And you're close to it now. It's like, okay, based on my moving parts, what would be a reasonable time frame to get this last chapter done? And that's okay. So we got to understand that, writer's block or life happening, whatever, those are going to be things that are going to occasionally pop up. When they pop up, where no one's really a fan of it popping up, but sometimes you see the moving part for what it is. You put something in place, to deal with it accordingly. You take the time you need so things are on track, and then you pick up where you left off.
Yeah, that is true. Because when you sometimes you got to take a break. Sometimes you got to change your genre. What type of books do you write?
Well, when you think about it, all 4 books in the audiobook series, I'll admit I'm kind of all over the place. Like the first book, Deeper, and I'll show it again. The first book is poetry based, but it's based on conversation with a family member. So Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep. So it's a poetic retelling of a conversation with family. So it is poetry based, but it's like nonfiction because it's based on real stuff that took place, for lack of a better term. 9 Stories of Faith, I would say, is more motivational, encouragement, empowerment, because all of us are dealing with something. Some people are doing something with each and every day. But these are like real accounts of real people that are living with and living through things. Nothing Minor is definitely sports based because it's based on my coverage of minor league baseball, but it's like real baseball players and real things and what have you. And then quotes and notes is definitely, like I said, journal, think piece, motivation, but it's more, like I said before, just being aware of the power of your mind. And you've got to just be real careful about what you allow to have residency. So you think about, like, books, one book that comes to mind, which definitely was an inspiration behind quotes and notes, was As a Man Thinketh. And then you think about what the Aristotle quote, I think, therefore I am. And just, even when you dive into faith pieces, like I said, what you put in your head, you got to be real careful and cognizant of what you put in your head and what you allow to take residency. Because, like I'm paraphrasing from Proverbs, with a person without control is like, what, a city without walls. So you got to be real careful, real cognizant. And it comes back to, like I said before, like when your elders told you to sit down somewhere, that would save you from getting your behind with. Not for real. Even all of us, myself included, have to go pause and sit down somewhere, or steal away, or you take time to whatever, pray, meditate, go for a walk, because you need that in order to just replug and get yourself and get your mind again.
Now, how important it is to edit your work?
Oh, of course, you have to. Look, part of the knock, one of the critiques of self-publishing is people are just putting stuff out there. They're not proofing, they're not editing. Like I said before, anything that you publish, that's a reflection of you. That's almost like your business card. And don't get me wrong, even through traditional publishing, there's a couple mistakes that will still every once in a while happen. But you want to, I guess the best way to put it is just like the saying, put your best foot forward.
Right.
You don't have to be perfect, but you don't want to be sloppy either. And sometimes it's like you can see formatting mistakes or things of that nature. So it's real important, like, if you don't have an English background, link up with someone who does, but see what work they've done.
Right. Do your research.
See samples of their work before you commit to something.
Yeah.
And still, even if it's something outsourced, like you shared, just like with the marketing, you still have to have a hand, you still have to keep your eyes on stuff. So yeah, it's real important. You still want it to be as professionally done as possible. And again, you just, as best as possible, want to put your best foot forward.
Yeah, that's true, because a lot of people like don't have didn't get an editor. And I met this one lady. Hello, is you there?
Yeah, I'm still.
I met this one lady. Like, I purchased her book because she purchased my book. Mm-hmm. So, and I was asking her, did she get an editor? And I wasn't trying to sound offensive or whatever, or trying to be funny with her. But like every other word, you could tell she did it herself. Mm-hmm. And I was telling her she should revise her book and I had an editor for her, but she'd have to pay the editor. And she was like, no. I put it out there. It was hard work. So she said, I'm leaving it like it is. So I'm telling her she's not going to get no sales. Only sales you're going to get is the sales from your families and friends, because they're going to try to support you. But if you get a sale, like as I'm talking to you as a publisher, as an author, that you need to get an editor and revise your book around. You need to just do that. But she wouldn't do it. This was like a couple of years ago. She wouldn't do it. So I just left it like that. And, because you can tell people, give people advice, but it's up to them. And she said she ain't had no money to get an editor. But I feel as though, and it's to all the authors that's out there, like, edit your work, because if you don't have the money, find you an editor and save for that editor. Whatever that editor wants you to pay, save it, and then put your work out.
Well, it's like you said, I think, and sometimes people hear the word edit and it's like, oh, they're going to change everything. Now, if it's a traditional publisher, I totally agree, because a lot of times traditional publishers are going to format it based on their formula and what sells.
Right.
So yeah, there's times the author's voice, gets watered down.
Yeah.
I get that. But like there's a saying, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can still be who you are, but it's just like, I'll use a steak example. You want to eat it raw, you want to eat it medium well. I'd rather have it medium well. That's just me. Or I living in the Southeast, and I know I still crack a few jokes whenever I talk with my colleagues in the Northeast. How do you like your tea? You can drink your tea. I like it a little bit sweet. I got to put a little bit of sugar or a little bit of honey or something in it, because otherwise it's like if I'm drinking like hot water and grass, I go out and hot grass. I'm just like, I do get that people, like I said, are very insulated about their work, and they hear edit and they feel like everyth's going to change. But when you talk with an editor, and you know this,
communicate.
The editor's job is to, if this is your voice, how can we amplify it? How can we make sure instead of it reaching 2 people, it's reaching 3? That's and there's going to be, a couple of word changes. There's going to be like some grammatical structure changes, but it's still going to be your voice. It's a difference between you saying the sky is blue versus the bluish sky, whatever, to you write something totally different. It's like, that's not what I said. So you, like you said, it comes back to one of the themes that you said before. You still, regardless, you still have to have a hand in what you're doing.
Right.
You have to have a hand in what you're doing. Like you said, part of it is communicating, hey, look, this is what I'm trying to say, but how can I say it better where it's still my voice, but it's a little bit more effective? It's just like the recipe says cook something for 15 minutes, but it's like, it's not quite there. I might need to leave it in there for 20.
Right.
It's still your meal. You're just making a simple adjustment so that meal is better.
Right.
That's all. Or like they, when something's steaming hot, like you can bite into it and burn your tongue and burn your mouth. I've done that too many times. It's like, let it cool for about 10, 15 minutes. It's still the same hot plate of whatever, but we're just going to do something a little bit differently. Now that it's cooled, it's like, okay, I can eat this slice of chest pie or cake or stuffing or meatloaf or whatever. And I ain't gonna be breathing like a fire-breathing dragon, having part of my tongue and my mouth burning and whatnot. It's okay to make adjustments so your work is just a little bit better. And this, there's things that I might not see. There's things that I see that you might not see.
Right.
But when we have these conversations, like, okay, I might not be able to go fully there with you, but I see what you're saying. Can we go a different direction? That's still okay. That's still okay.
Look, when I first started, I've been writing since 2007, I think. And my first book, an editor did try to change my whole wording, wanted to take like the details out and everything. I'm one of them authors that had to revise my book because everybody was like, your book don't have no details. Where the details at? But the editor told me I didn't need no details. You understand what I'm saying? So I just had to revise my book. I had details in it, but she took them out. So I put them back and got me another editor, and then my book started selling. Because a lot of times you miss the details. People want to read the details.
Well, think about it. When you provide details, you're providing context. When you provide context, people can understand. And it's almost like the people see you where you are, but how did you get here? And it's like, if you leave that out, it's like you're here, but we have no clue of how you got here. And so now that comes back to, like we're saying before, your voice, your style. What are things that can help fine tune your voice and style? And those are those, like you said, those are conversations you have to have with your editor or proofreader, whatnot. And if you can't have those conversations, then you got to see who you can have those conversations with. It's kind of like We've all been out to eat. We order something. This doesn't work for me. I need to order something different. That happens sometimes.
That's so true. Let me ask you a question. Where do you see yourself at in 5 years?
Oh gosh, healthy, happy, um, and doing the continued thing of being open to diving into different topics and formats. Like you've seen, each book is different. The audiobook series, the author's mixtape, which you can download from whatever, is totally different. That's spoken word. That's freestyle, where it's like, here's a topic, make up something. All right, let's make up something, go in the studio. So I still see myself doing things that will challenge me to continue to grow, to continue to get better, topics that will allow me to continue to reach, different audiences within the larger reading community. Even if I do another poetry book, I'll do it differently than how I did this one. Even if I do another sports book, it may be a different sport. Even if I do another think piece, it might come from a different, vantage point. So even whether it's topics I revisit or brand new topics, it will still allow me to grow, still allow me to learn, still allow me to share and exchange like we've done tonight, still allow me even now taking a few notes right here. What can I do to continue to get better and still be the reminder? It's a combination of, yes, I'm running a marathon. Every once in a while, I got to pick up my pace. And every once in a while, I got to sit down somewhere. Every once in a while, I can work from home, but I may need to work in the library, or I may need to go find a nice corner outside. Like, how, like in New York City, and I'm sure other big cities, they have the chess tables outside where people might have to do something like that. It might be where, okay, a day I might not need to write. I need to go out walking and listen to the birds and watch the squirrels dancing around or whatever. Or, I just have to look at continuing to grow, continue to get better, continue to be authentic and accessible, continue to understand that there's a universe of readers out there that I haven't connected with.
Right.
So talking, with folks like you and on these platforms, whether it's the different topics, whether I'm doing something locally or wherever, just continue to be open to the journey and just try to leave as positive a footprint as I can. Basically it.
And that's all you can do. Before I let you go, I want you to answer this question. Name a do or a don't. And this could be for the new authors, the do's or the don't, which you shouldn't do and what you should do as a new author.
Okay, here's a do. One do that comes to mind: talk with fellow authors, take notes. Right. See what they do and ask yourself, is there something that they do that makes sense, and how do you put your spin on it? It's almost like looking at it like a flavor of ice cream. Nothing wrong with vanilla, but maybe I need chocolate this time. Maybe I need strawberry. Maybe I need butter pecan. So I think it's good to talk with fellow authors and have a good sharing and exchanging like we're doing right now, because there's things that that I don't know. There's things that I know that you don't know.
Right.
But us, regardless of the topics we cover or where we go, it helps us to get better. The don'ts: don't doubt yourself, because there's going to be plenty of people, known and unknown, who are going to take shots at you. They're going to say, well, just because you're not on the New York Times or the Chicago Times, or you're not this person or that person, you're not a real writer. Look, when you publish, first, when you put pen to pad, you're real. When you're mapping and outlining, you're real. When you publish, you're real. And I'm going to say, this is a true story. I was at an event. I had only done 2 books at the time, and this gentleman was like, "You've only written 2 books, man. I've written so many books," and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's great. And I asked him a simple question. Well, how many have you published? And he got quiet because he hadn't published anything. Professional is like, here's my business card. When you're ready to have a conversation, let me know. Because there's people who are going to take shots at you. And,
right.
And shots taken from the usual suspects and people you will not expect. But don't doubt yourself, and don't you, like we were saying earlier, you might not have published as many books, you might not have done as many interviews, you might not have done as many bookings or whatever, but that doesn't make you less real or less valid. So as long as you are doing the process of writing, that makes you a writer. Like, you can't listen to everybody. Like last, I know writers were always on this creative tangent. When you go out to the park and you see someone flying a kite, are you going to talk to the person who does it effortlessly? Is huffing and puffing and hooting and hollering and getting tangled up? It's almost like the loudest in the room isn't the smartest in the room. So I'm just going to leave those things there. And I guess this would be a good time to pause and pivot in regards to upcoming events.
Right. I want you to, your upcoming events, where they're going to be at. And I want you to give out your platforms. Like, if someone want to purchase your book, where can they go?
Sure. Okay. So first off, upcoming events. I'm confirmed January 30th, Long Branch, New Jersey, at the bookstore. That'll be from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. It'll be an author's talk. I'm so excited to have Dr. David Julius Ford as my moderator. So it'll be time, probably like 5:30 to 6 people to get there, kind of meet and greet. Then 6 to about 6:45, do our authors talk and Q&A, and then close out with our book signing. So that'll be January 30th, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Book House in Long Branch, New Jersey. February 8th at Goddles Books, Gotttuals, Goddles Books in Warner Robins, Georgia. I'll be one of the participating authors, as they usually have an authors roundtable where it's a group of authors talking about their books, signing, and all that. That'll be from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Again, Warner Robins, Georgia, February 8th. February 22nd, I will be in the greater Detroit, Michigan area as part of the 9th annual African American Family Book Festival, presented by Detroit Book City. That'll be from 12 to 5 p.m. I'll be one of the participating authors and pull not only a selection from one of my books, but also a selection from a book that has influenced me. So those are the 3 events taking place: January 30th, February 8th, February 22nd. Again, January 30th, Long Branch, New Jersey, the Book House. February 8th, Goddles, I always mispronounce it, Books in Warner Robins. And then February 22nd, Detroit Book City for their 9th annual African American Family Festival. So those
That's good.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm, like I said, just be thankful and grateful, which I definitely am. Best way to stay connected with me is probably going to be Linktree, which is linktr.ee/authorasnorton. When you go on there, you can pull the social media, the website, how to purchase, archival interviews, things along those lines. Of course, if you're a coffee fan, which is what I've been sipping on, the Author Andrew Snorton blend coffee, that's in collaboration with Fonte's Coffee. So I'm sipping on the bourbon infused right now. Yes, the alcohol burns off in the roasting process, so don't trip. But yeah, probably Linktree. But for people, if you don't want to type in the Linktree, Instagram, Author A. Snorton will be the easiest way to stay connected, informed, all that, and then some.
So your books, are they on Amazon? I know you said a website, but if they want to do a digital book, could they purchase it on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles?
Yeah, if people are used to ordering on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, you can. Likewise, I always encourage people to support our independent
website.
Definitely. So if people are used to purchasing on Amazon, you can go on my Amazon author page, just type in Author Andrew Snorton and it'll take you there. But I also encourage people to please support our independent bookstores.
Yeah.
If independent bookstores is available in my newsletter. So when you click on my Linktree, the very first thing is a newsletter. You can go in there and see the listing of the independent bookstores and venues that I'm in. So of course, I appreciate each and everybody's support. It does not go lightly. Like I said, if you're an online order or whatever, and a couple of the books are available in ebook editions. So Nothing Minor is available in an ebook. So if that's your thing, that's cool. But for the traditionalists out there, please support your independent bookstores. Like I'll tell anybody, if it's not,
And I want to.
I'll just say this: if it weren't for your independent bookstores, not just me, but a lot of people would not get the opportunities
Right.
to folks and what have you. So please, shouts to all our independent bookstores.
That's right. Support. You have to support. It's all about support one another. And I want to thank you so much, Arthur Andrew, for being on Let's Talk To podcast. Like I said, if you want to see the replay, you can go on my YouTube channel at Let's Talk To podcast. You can go on the YouTube channel. I will be sharing. It is on Facebook too now, but I will be sharing to different platforms. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Let's Talk To podcast, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you again, Andrew, for being on Let's Talk To podcast.
I'll say this in closing. Thank you again for opening up your platform. I enjoyed my time here. To your amazing audience, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's stay connected. And of course, let's continue to support the host who's just kind enough to be like, hey, I want you here. And
right.
Just thank you. Seriously, thank you.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye now. And again, I would like to thank everybody for tuning in to Let's Talk To podcast. Please go to my YouTube channel. Let's Talk To podcast. Go to all my platforms and follow, like, or subscribe. That's all I can say. Follow, like, or subscribe. And thank you so much for being part of Let's Talk To.
Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk To podcast with author Charnel Williams. Tune in next time every Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And don't forget to live, laugh, and love.